Hello, everybody. My name is Rodgon. I'm an artist, designer, cartoonist, mentor, teacher, and today we are going to be drawing together. Today's lesson is going to be about arms and how to draw arms and how to draw them better and how to start identifying like some factors within them and little elements that are going to make drawing arms for you a lot easier. Ta-da! But we're going to go over how we normally learn how to draw arms, and then we're going to change what we have already learned into a more stable way of thinking, right? An easier way to manipulate the shapes to be able to make things look better. So now, let's start off by identifying the parts of an arm. We have the shoulder. We have a bicep, and the bicep sits at the top of our arm. We have a tricep, and that normally sits on the back of the arm, or the underside that gets behind you. Then you have your forearm. You have your elbow. And let's see, forearm. And then you have your hands and your fingers, which we won't like cover in full detail today, mostly because I've made a bunch of videos with hands in them, and I think it's just easier to go look at those videos before. So let's start going over a normal standard arm. We're gonna have our own wonderful little dude right here called Stan. Stan is just gonna be our standard NPC dude. Okay, he doesn't have any super strong identifiable features. He's just there to be drawn. Hello, Stan. All right. So Stan is going to be our basic representation of a human body. And we're gonna need him if we're gonna actually like explain how arms and body parts connect. Let me make sure my YouTube peeps are on the chat. Awesome. And my first Dread Silverback reviews. Yes, you are. You made it first. You're awesome, and thank you for sending me your Discord on Instagram. Woo, you're welcome. If you guys are subscribed to me and you guys have not joined our Discord, please send me a message on Instagram so that I can send it to you, as well as your goodie bags. You guys will get an updated one for December that, I kind of like, I took too much time off. Like, I enjoyed life a little bit too much with my girlfriend that came from Scotland. So I need to go back and make it up to everybody that I kind of like, let down in December because I just kind of focused on me. So I'm gonna be giving you guys a really cool thing. Like, I'm gonna be giving you guys like a preview of an upcoming product that I'm selling, like entire book. So you guys will have something really cool because I let you guys down in December. Like, I only did the challenges and everything, but I didn't add any discount codes and stuff like that like I normally would. So I'm, just gonna have to make it up to you guys somehow, right? Emily Art's excited for today's lesson. Hey, me too. Second one ever, but I have to leave. Oh, no problem, man. Have a wonderful day. Nothing wrong with enjoying it. Just can't see it. Well, you guys can always catch all these streams later on YouTube whenever you guys are done. So, okay. In order to talk about arms in general, you need to understand how they connect to the human body. Now, in this case, we are using the prime example of just having a body shaped like a beanbag and identifying the rib cage and the collarbone. This is all we are going to be doing in order to figure out our shape here. We are going to have Stan here with the same concept, a rib cage and your collarbone. If you're wondering how you find the collarbone, you normally find the middle of the rib cage or the middle of your rib cage shape by creating a little divot, right? Once you create this little divot, just follow the middle line up a little bit and you're going to end up with the perfect positioning for your collarbone. The collarbone is not at the top of the circle. The top of this is the back of your spine, and your actual like spine, that area is a little bit more flat than people might think. Right? If you look at it from the front, it would be something more like this as opposed to just a flat, like a circle. It has like this flat section to it because of the collarbone. And that's where the neck and stuff like that come from. Okay? So if you go up the middle part, you get to determine how tall your rib cage is going to be and also where your collarbone is going to go. The collarbone is important because the collarbone dictates where the shoulder is connected to the body. So if you think about it like this, your shoulder is connected like this to your body, roughly. This is a very simplification of it, but just for overlapping purposes, it actually just wraps into, from your collarbone around your rib cage to the back of your spine. So you have your rib cage, and I'm going to draw this a couple times so you guys understand it. You have your rib cage, you have your collarbone. The collarbone extends a little bit past the body, the rib cage sometimes, but just as an like a rule, a general rule, you can just have it be at the middle of your shape. Because your arm kind of falls at the middle of your rib cage anyways. So you can use that as another mapping point. Right? So once you have your rib cage and your collarbone, you can wrap a shape around your rib cage, connecting to the collarbone inside, and you end up with this little heart shape, or like, if you're looking at it from the top, it's more like this. Your chest and your collarbone, right? And then you look down your body. So knowing how your shoulder connects is very important. The reason that we have to keep the collarbone in mind is because if your collarbone goes up, that means your shoulder is up. If your collarbone is middle, it could either be either here or here, because your collarbone does not go down. Your collarbone does not go down at all. You can't make it go down, but it goes up. The mobility is just not there. So your shoulders are always going to be at least at this height from just a standing position. If you're going up, your collarbone goes up, and then this little shape goes up as well. The next thing that you need to consider after that is how your bicep, or the general initial cylinder right here, is placed into your arm. And that happens like so. And this is how I've found it's like the most easy way to remember it, is you have your shoulder, and then it's your pectoral muscle, and then it's your bicep, or this cylinder right there. Okay? So then you have your back muscles, and that is the layering that goes on within these areas. Your shoulder tends to be predominant, right? Then you need to understand that your rib cage plays a role in your arm, like, because the overlaps. So be it if it's a female character, that's where you would draw your breasts, right? Or your pectoral muscles in general, if you're a man. Then from there, behind that, that's where your bicep comes out of. So learning those overlaps start giving you a way to give depth to just simple lines. So you have to learn how this connection works in order to actually make arms and hands and like body parts of that sort actually function well. So in this case, if my collarbone is going up, my arm is going up, then my pectoral muscle is going up. It connects to the bottom of the armpit, the pectoral muscle. If it's a female, you would have your breast, and then that breast is sitting on top of the pectoral muscle. So therefore, it's connecting at the same place, but then you have your breast tissue on top of that. The arm comes underneath that, underneath the shoulder, and you end up getting the armpit, like flaring. That's how you see those little armpit sections. It's just a combination of a bunch of muscles, but its simplified version is more like this, right? It's like shapes, shoop shoop, wrapping around each other. And then you have your back muscles if you have back muscles. Your neck muscles would pop up from here. All right, so once you understand how this area connects, then you can start going in and seeing how it connects with it from a profile view. You can make the same rib cage like pretty easily by just changing that. Finding the collarbone into the middle of the body. We have our little heart shape that wraps around our rib cage, and then our pectoral muscles into our arm. Cool. Now, if we're able to practice just up to that point, we will eventually be able to draw quicker versions of these things. Okay? Using this as a landmark to wrap your objects around is a very important key in this. Being able to visualize things as three-dimensional objects for the front and the back helps out immensely when it comes down to drawing any sort of an anatomic thing. Because I need to understand where this collarbone point is, and then I need to understand where it's going to be on this side. I also need to understand how thick my shape is, so when I'm drawing, I know to keep it a certain width. Right? This is the reason that we learn perspective. It's not, and this is the reason that anatomy and perspective go hand in hand. Because you need to understand how concepts like these translate into things like this. And the body is not a simple shape like this, so you need to learn to combine these sort of things. Like you need to learn to combine shapes to create complex shapes. And learning how to map those out as well allow you to learn how to draw very cool things that actually have depth. That also teaches you how to do foreshortening and other little tricks like that. Because you start thinking, okay, cool, this is a shape, right? And then this is another shape, and then it's another shape. And then when you start adding perspective, you can start giving things like cool dynamic poses without even really doing much. You're just learning how to move an object in space, and therefore that becomes just more aesthetically pleasing. Let's see. So practice your rib cages at first. I want you to just practice up to this point, because this is easy. Up until this point becomes a little easy, right? If you have arms up until this point, it's relatively easy to connect it to the body. Now, the bottom part of the arm, this part right here, tends to be a big problem with a lot of people, and it was hard for me to understand this too, because it's a very complex shape that is not easily broken down, even though it is just technically a cylinder, there's so many muscles and stuff like that that move around that it was really hard for me to like simplify it to an extent. But I found a way that made sense to me, and that what made it click to me, it was to see it like this. You have shoulder, bicep. When I have my bicep, I extend my bicep a little bit, and then I overlap the muscles for my forearm there. What is essentially what I'm simplifying by doing this is I have my bicep muscle, then this little area that you have, this right here, is going to be represented by that. And then my forearm connects a little bit behind my elbow, and my elbow is behind my bicep. So you get a little bit of an overlap. And since this bottom part is also a complex shape consisting of a cylinder and a sphere, pretty much, we have to keep in mind that this is going to have a little bit of overlapping lines. So when you're simplifying this to the extreme, you end up with something like this. Yeah, something like that. Now, another way of seeing this is seeing it like I see ankles. Uh, Whenever you have your arm, consider that the top part of your arm, or your bicep, it goes all the way up to your elbow, right? So you have your bicep muscle and your elbow. Now, your forearm is going to be kind of like this piece that just wraps around, kind of like a Barbie doll. Right? It's going to wrap around, and it's going to pivot from this point. So if you imagine this area overlapping like this, that is how you're going to be able to figure out the movement for these, because it all pivots from here. So as you move farther back, you still go around the shape. When you move farther down, it still wraps around your shape. And then you can start moving it in different directions as well. But doing little layouts like this and seeing how the movement works helps me out so much. Like, whenever I have the elbow in a different place, for example, then the arm would bend differently. Instead of having the pivot points on the side, you have them on the top and the bottom. Right? And this is the tricep at this point on your shoulder. So when you have it like this, the little bump on your forearm tends to go wherever your hand is going. So if your hand is bent up, this little forearm bump will be up on the front. If your hand is down, the little bump tends to be on the bottom. Your hand is down, your little bump's on the bottom. So if you keep that in mind while you're drawing your arms, it's going to help you be able to figure out positions for your arms. You know, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to come up with poses better. Since the hand is going up, I draw the bump up. Let's yeah. It's a pretty accurate statement. So bump down or bump up, depending on which way your hand is flexing. Let's see. Hold on. Let me plug in my phone because this shit's dying. Alright, while I charge this for a second, I'm going to read some comments. Let's see. When drawing the shoulder part of your arm, is it better to still make the whole circle, like telling if something is behind or in front, or it matters just to see it? It's always good to be able to visualize your elements like going in the front and the back of your shape. So whenever you're drawing shoulders, like use this as like a little pivot point and create like a lollipop effect. Right? So you have a little bit of an overlap in the front and in the back. So whenever you are going in and drawing your hands after that, regardless of what position your hands are going to be doing, you still have a nice visual sense of it being a three-dimensional shape. So yes, you should learn, like just visualize how to see it from the front and the back. There's nothing that you should not like try to aim to learn better, right? Like don't ever just try to simplify everything and like try to like make life easier for yourself. Being an artist isn't easy. It really isn't. So the sooner that we take away this idea of like always finding a shortcut or always finding like the style like cheat code or whatever, just sit down and actually try to draw what you're like trying to draw. Like it's just gonna make you a better artist, and it's kind of hard to forget after you've figured how something is drawn. Like once something clicks, it's like for life. So it's our knowledge isn't like depreciative. Like we don't lose value because we don't use it in a while or something. Oh, it's not connected. Hold on. Meanwhile, you guys should tell me what we should draw on our next stream. What should we work on for next stream? Hair, huh? That's one that's been asked quite a bit. Dreaded silverback. Oh, that makes sense. I've been working on foreshortening in perspective. When you're drawing, you already know what kind of perspective you want. So your perspective is going to be heavily dictated by what direction you make your elements go. Obviously, right? So in this case, for example, let's keep this guy. Let's keep it Stan. So if I follow and I keep doing Stan's anatomy, as I go, I'm still visualizing each one of his body parts as different, and like um, shapes in space. So at any given point, if I decide that I don't want this positioning for his legs, he's still in space. He's still not in like a flat grid or anything. I don't like drawing grids, mostly because they like lock you into like a certain way of like drawing. But once I have this, I can decide that if I don't want this flat, I just bring that shape down. And now I just created my perspective grid. Because now I have a flat surface touching a ground. By having that, I can figure out a vanishing point and therefore come up with my horizon. Right? If I create any element that's touching the ground, regardless of whatever perspective I'm drawing it in, if I follow those vanishing lines back, where they connect is going to be your vanishing point. So I can start with just drawing my character, and by keeping in mind that it is an object in space, I can figure out my whole scene or my horizon points and stuff like that after, if I want to give it a background and stuff. The calf is a very similar concept to the forearm, where it overlaps. And the reason that a lot of people don't get them or they find them really hard is because we learn our arms and our legs like this. right? This is how we learn to draw our arms and legs. Well, even though this is nice and it works as like an initial version of how to draw arms, they are much more complex than that. But we can simplify those shapes by just creating overlapping lines. Right? If we learn how these overlapping lines, aka just a beanbag, so it's a beanbag. It's the same concept as learning how to draw a beanbag, by the way. Learning how these overlap whenever they are turned in different directions is going to give you the ability to draw arms incredibly good. Do them skinnier, do them fatter. Figure out what happens when you take each one of those creases and change them. Well, in this case, it kind of looks like a sleeve now. Right? If you do skinny ones with a curve right there, I don't know, then that could be a sleeve as well. That could be a finger. You know, it's understanding the shapes is meaningless if you are not applying the thing that you're trying to learn. Like we all we all know how to draw a sphere. We all know how to draw a sphere. It's a circle with divisions, right? But how often do we apply that when we're drawing, let's say, an eye? When you're drawing an eye, it's just a sphere with eyelids. So why is that so much harder than drawing this? Why is it hard for people to draw the arms on one side of a body or the other when all they need to do is trace their shapes from one side to the other by using all your basic anatomy knowledge and your basic perspective knowledge, right? So if I need to find this side for the collarbone, let's say, then I can find this side because I understand that this is a three-dimensional shape. If my collarbone is down here in the middle, I just know that it has to wrap around. So now I have my understanding of my whole body structure within like a second. Because now I have my biggest hard surface. I have my rib cage. And this I did basing it off a square. It could be a square, it could be a circle, it could any way that you need to map it out is going to be the best way. Whichever way makes sense. Because not everybody sees things like me. Not everybody is gonna be able to take a little beanbag and visualize that as like all the anatomy parts you need to be able to create a drawing. Right? It's just not something that comes easy to people. So I try to explain it in different ways so that people can understand it better. You know, I've always been a very permanent person in the thought process that if you try to teach a fish how to climb a tree, it's going to think it's stupid its entire life. So, you know, you got to teach different people, different, you know, animals how to climb a tree different. Or even if they need to climb a tree. Because sometimes we don't even need some of the knowledge that, you know, like gets imparted on us. And that's all up to us and how far we are willing to take what we want to learn. Like maybe you just want to learn how to draw something really cute so you can make a book and that's it. Right? But maybe you want to make it into a career. And if you want to make it into a career, then it's something that you need to really consider, like focusing on and being really, really, really damn adamant on. Because that is the like gateway to unlocking a lot of different techniques and styles and like stuff like that at a more professional level. And that's something that you normally don't get taught, you know? So yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see, what other things with arms? Arms overlapping, like, you know, like foreshortening and stuff like that. That comes a lot easier when you understand what you're drawing again. Like when you start drawing with shapes in mind, instead of drawing with style in mind, it's very easy to deconstruct what you're drawing and figure out how that is being impacted at different stages of your like foreshortening. When you start like, and that's as easy as just drawing shapes like spheres and then putting another sphere behind it and then seeing what that happens when you do that, right? This stuff translates to this. Doing this with different shapes, right? And then seeing what little overlapping lines happen, what they do, how they disappear, when they look good, when they look wrong. You know, doing little things like this and combining little things like this are what gives you the power to be able to create fun anatomy, fun poses, your own styles. Like, once you understand the concept of the basic anatomy of the arm, right? Something like that. Then you can take that and you can stylize that any way you want at this point, because you understand the concepts that are there. So now you can play around with it and figure out cool different things to do with all the anatomy. Once you understand something, now you can get to deconstruct it. Right? Once you understand just the basic premise of something, now you can take that and create something awesome with it based on your imagination. But they're all based on the same concepts. And from this, the same thing applies to drawing something more subtle. Right? The same concept applies. It's the same general premises. Oh, you want to draw a robot. Right? At this point, understanding just the concept of how the body connects is going to give you an ample amount of space to be able to do whatever the hell you want with your design. And understanding more of the anatomy is going to give you the ability to go from something as simple as just like a little chibi arm to something like a Hulk arm with a ton of musculature. With the same ease. You'll understand. It's just a matter of understanding how the elements connect. Ta-da! And yeah, like the same general concept is gonna be the legs as well. I mean, I've made videos about the legs quite often, so you guys can go back and take a look at those if you guys want. Next stream, I say clothes. Maybe the squish against something like someone sitting on the chair. Uh, Forearms. Yeah, because I tried drawing people hugging and I couldn't figure out the push and pull. Uh, okay, so yeah, we can probably do that. So your forearms are gonna be a problem for a while, because forearms are hard. Like the concept of it being like it's like a flatter section here. It's not a circle. It's more like a cylinder, or like a squished cylinder. And then it goes onto your muscles that wrap around your forearm into your bicep. So it's like a bunch of things that are happening within that area. And a lot of muscles, like little fibers and stuff like that, are there, right? So it's a difficult area to learn how to draw. But again, it's just about learning how to take like a simple shape and make a complex shape. You just have to start thinking about it like that. I normally just end up drawing shapes like this, right? I make sure that I'm thinking of my elements digging into other parts of my arm. So I have this overlap that happens. Now, most of the time, I consider the top part of the arm to be the bicep into the elbow. Like, so this whole entire first section of the arm is up until the elbow. So let's say I'm looking at this from the back a little bit. So my tricep, my bicep, into the elbow. And then I figure out how my forearm would wrap around this initial part, and I create that little overlap. That little tiny visualization of it going around my arm is everything. That little tiny curvature to this line is everything to that hand pose. Because without it, it would just look wrong. And that is what comes with time and experience and things like that. That's just something that comes with a lot of practice and a lot of fucking up. Well, let's see. Another arm. When you have to draw the hand smaller and the forearm's really big, keep in mind the same concepts. Shoulders, bicep, chest. The little overlap so we can create the little gaps that we need. Into muscles, into wrist. So if you consider the wrist a different part, like a completely different section of your arm, and instead of thinking it as two parts, you think about it as one part, two parts, three parts. If you think about it like that, it's going to be a little bit easier as well. Because we do have quite a bit of space right here between this that's technically almost static into this part that's not static at all because it just flexes up and down quite a bit because of the mobility of our hand, and then into our hand. So when you're drawing a hand, it's not just the shoulder and the bicep could be the same general shape because only this part really moves differently. Then you have your forearm that wraps around your shape, and then you have your wrist that dictates how your arm is going to go, and then your hand. And your hand can be doing whatever you need to. So yeah, that's a great way to like see it. Like one section, forearm up until the meaty part, like when it starts going down, and then your wrist, and then your hand. So those are the elements that you can probably like start refining. If you've already been drawing for a long time, that is going to be the next step to learn, and if you want to get better at them. And learning to distinguish each one is going to help you be able to figure out cool different anatomy and body shapes and stuff like that that you can play around with to create new styles and new techniques. So we can sit here and just draw a bunch of hands doing different things. Doesn't the forearm change a bit when you flip your hand? Yeah, I mentioned it before, like here. So if your hand is pointing up when you bend your hand, your forearm's muscle on the top is gonna be accentuated, right? So that's gonna happen like that, like boop boop. It's gonna go up. When your hand is pointing down, the bottom muscle or the bulge on the bottom tends to happen more. So it alternates back and forth, and you just have to make sure that you keep that in mind whenever you are drawing it. So if your hand is going to be holding something up, your forearm would be going up. If your hand is holding something down here, then that bottom muscle tends to be more accentuated. So, ta-da! Let's see, we are running out of space, so we're just going to start drawing little hands stuff in places. Chris Cook, I always use references for things like that. It gets a bit better, but never got past checking references. It often affects my overall piece when I've used references as well. Yeah, I mean, nobody just learns how to draw hands like without references. No one does. Like, like hands are some of the hardest part to get. Like arms in general and hands are some of the hardest things to learn how to draw. And because it comes down to like minuscule changes in somebody's like visualization that will like just change the overall look and way that you see things. uh, we are taught to draw hands in so many simplified ways that we often just kind of forget that we need to learn how to draw the bones and what the little protrudy parts are. And you want to know the stupidest but the most important hand thing that I learned, period. That's my niece. I'm going to call her back in a little bit. The most important thing that you need to remember with hands is that your knuckles dictate how wide your hand is, how thick your hand is. Right? So your hand, your knuckle is going to show from the top and from the bottom. The bottom part is the palmy part of your bottom of your hand. The top part is just your knuckles. So whenever you dictate that first initial finger, you already dictated the width of your hand. You already dictated how thick your fingers are gonna be. You already dictated what positioning you're gonna be like drawing your hand in. It was one of those things where I just couldn't stop seeing it. So whenever I'm drawing hands now, I dictate where my first thumb or where my first finger is going to be, and that is going to dictate everything else I need about the hand. Even the spacing that you need for like fingers. And I've made a like whole video on hands, and I have like the 100 hand challenge video. So if you guys want to go and like see me just draw a bunch of hands, that's probably like the better way to go about it. I'd say my best pieces are reference ones, but I like the unique ones the most. There's nothing like okay hmm, how do you like phrase this? When you are good enough at something that you are able to do it from memory, that's fucking amazing. Right? Like, please tell me otherwise if you don't feel like that whenever you like draw something just strictly from your brain and it comes out cool. How fucking cool is that? Right? How awesome is it to just like be like, ugh, I just drew something and it looks right. It doesn't look wonky at all. like, that's a pretty nice feeling. So, whenever you do use reference, it's not a thing. That's not a problem. That's not like something to look down upon or anything. Some of the best artists in the world, like Alex Ross, like use references for everything, and it's just fantastic. And Jesus Christ, like thank God, because like that's how their artwork shine, right? It shines through representing like a bunch of like realistic traits. Now, a lot of the things that I draw, for example, is mostly just uh, from memory, but it's very heavily like catered to people that are trying to just learn how to conceptualize things, right? That is my goal. Like my goal is to make you guys see a difference between a circle and a sphere. And oh my god, my niece is so like jitterbug, man. Like Jesus Christ. Message, message, message. We will have a little bit of space here. So yeah, like differentiating something like a circle from a sphere, but not with shadows. Shadows are not even necessary. Like, okay, shadows are easy once you learn to draw like this. Shadows become stupidly easy, right? Like, and because once you start visualizing things like this, and you learn how to subdivide something, right? All you need to do is dictate your light source, and then you already have all your segments done. You already know what you gotta like shade, and if you learn how to like dig into your shapes and create negative spaces, you'll be able to map it out so you know what parts are getting hit by light, what parts aren't, and then shadows become relatively easy. Can the next cam stream be? See, I don't think there's a need for me to make a whole video on foreshortening. You want me to give you like the tip, the trick to foreshortening and how you get better at it really, really quickly? Like, okay, let me make some space. Do we have space in any of these previous pages? Yeah, we have a little bit of space right here. All right, so what you need to do for foreshortening is just do this, okay? Take, learn how to draw a sphere. Once you have that, you're going to take two spheres and you're going to overlap them and you're going to draw through them, right? Once you do that, you're going to take those two same spheres and you're going to just meld them together. So now you have something akin of a beanbag. Okay? You're going to take that and you're going to start playing with slightly different variations. Make beanbags that are much, much, much closer to being closed. Make beanbags that are almost completely overlapping and see how that looks. And then start changing it so it's not necessarily a beanbag. Start changing it into different shapes. And then slowly but steadily start adding different parts to the beanbag. So maybe it's a beanbag into another little section that bends, while still keeping in mind that everything is a 3D shape. Right? And you're still drawing through. And as you get better at just drawing these basic shapes, you'll end up being just better at drawing actual things in foreshortening over time. you'll just know how to overlap things a little bit better. So foreshortening is when you have something in the foreground, like a hand or something like that, and then you have like the rest of the body in the back seeming like it's in the distance or something. And then you can do it the other way around too. You can send it to the back and make it look like it's... So that is foreshortening, taking something and like overlapping it to like make it look like something else is in between. So these exercises with simple shapes get you to be able to do things like this. And it'll get you like to the point where you can draw pretty much anything that you guys are going to be like looking at the sketchbook. Like I spend my entire time talking about this stuff, right? And then these like doodles that you guys love and you guys, you know, love to see are all done with the same concept in mind. Oh, here's the hands one, by the way. So we did 100 hands. And we talked all about hands and everything that hands are. So if you guys want to go see that video, it's on my YouTube. It might be on the lives section of it, but yeah, wherever the sketch streams are, just go like and like look at that. We also made one of faces. We did a head one as well. We should do an arm one. Yeah, that could be a really cool thing to do tomorrow. Maybe we just do an arm, like the arm how to draw. Boom. Yeah, I think our time for today is quite up though. I think we have filled up the page. We have talked enough about arms that I feel completely okay with saying that we have successfully learned a little bit more about arms. If you guys do have any images that you guys draw alongside with me and you guys want me to share them, tag me on the Instagram stories. I love resharing everybody's artwork. I love, you know, showcasing some of you guys. If you guys do any fan art, that's amazing. Not that I've done any personal work for you guys to do fan art of lately, but anything that is really cool and like something I can like, you know, like show off, I like doing it because I am driven by ego. Ego feeds me. If I don't have the ego and the props, I die. So make sure to go give me those on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, and anywhere else that you guys can find me. All right. For now, we will say goodbye. So farewell. Love you all. Stay happy, stay doodly, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another lesson at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and yeah, kick ass.